The message came on a Sunday evening when the sky outside Claire's apartment window was turning from pale blue to gray, the kind of hour when memories felt closer than usual, and when her phone lit up with an unfamiliar number, she almost ignored it, but the name at the end of the message made her pause. Ethan, a name she had not heard in years, a name tied to a chapter of her life she had closed with care, and yet never fully locked. And as she read his short, polite words asking if she had time to talk, her mind moved fast through images of a boy she once helped raise, a teenager who had asked her for help with homework, with heartbreak, with growing up, and now, somehow, he was reaching out again, and she wondered what kind of man he had become, what weight had brought him back to her door, and though she felt unsure, she answered yes, because kindness had always been her weakness and listening had always been her strength, and they agreed to meet the next day at a small cafe by the water, a neutral place, safe and public, and when she arrived early, she watched the harbor and tried to steady her thoughts, reminding herself that this was only a conversation, nothing more, but when Ethan walked in, taller, calmer, with a quiet confidence she did not remember, she felt the strange pull of time collapsing, as if years had folded in on themselves, and he greeted her with respect, not familiarity, which somehow made the moment heavier, and as they sat and ordered coffee, he spoke quickly, like someone afraid of losing courage, telling her he was confused about life, about choices, about love, and Claire listened closely, her face calm, her voice steady, offering clear advice without judgment, telling him that feeling lost did not mean he was weak, that love did not always come with signs or certainty, that growing into adulthood meant learning how to sit with doubt without letting it define you. And Ethan listened with focus, like every word mattered, like he had been holding questions for a long time, and the pace of the conversation moved fast, skipping small talk, moving straight into truth, and Claire noticed how carefully he chose his words, how he avoided certain topics, how something unsaid hovered between them, and when he finally admitted that he had not known who else to ask, that his own mother felt distant and his father often silent, Claire felt a soft ache in her chest, because she remembered those silences, remembered the way Mark, her ex-husband, had closed himself off instead of asking for help, and she wondered if some patterns never truly disappeared, and as Ethan thanked her for listening, he hesitated, his fingers tapping the cup, his eyes dropping to the table, and then he asked if she had ever regretted leaving, and the question hit her without warning, sharp but honest, and she answered simply, saying that regret was not the right word, that she had made the best choice she could with what she knew then, and that sometimes two people loved each other but did not know how to grow together, and Ethan nodded, as if that explained something inside him, and the conversation ended faster than she expected, like a door closing gently instead of slamming, but as they stood to leave, he asked if they could walk for a minute, and outside, the air was cool and the city moved around them, and he told her she had been a steady presence in his life when things felt unstable, that she had mattered more than she probably knew, and Claire felt emotion rise but kept her voice even, telling him she was glad if she had helped, and that he was stronger than he realized, and as they parted ways, she watched him walk off with a quiet confidence that made her proud, but when she returned home, the silence felt different, heavier, and she realized that the advice he had asked for might not have been the real reason he reached out, and as she sat alone, replaying his words, she felt the past stir, not in a dramatic way, but in a slow, unsettling way, like a door cracking open just enough to let old light spill through. And she wondered what consequences came from reopening old connections, what truths waited behind memories she thought she had settled, and whether helping one young man had just shifted the direction of her carefully rebuilt life. They walked side by side along the waterfront without speaking at first, the city lights starting to flicker on as the sky darkened, and Ethan's steps were slow but steady, like he was building courage with each breath, and when he finally spoke, his voice was calm but heavy, saying that Claire had always been the person who made things feel normal when his home felt broken, and she listened without interrupting, sensing that this moment mattered more than the advice he had asked for earlier, and he told her that growing up after the divorce had been confusing, that his father had changed in quiet ways, becoming distant, not angry, just tired, and that through all of it, Claire had remained a memory of balance and warmth, and as he talked, the pace of his words picked up, like once he started, he could not stop, and he admitted that he had been carrying something for years, something he never planned to say, but felt dishonest keeping silent any longer, And then he revealed that his father had never truly moved on, that Mark spoke of Claire in small, unguarded moments, never with bitterness, always with regret, saying he should have listened more, should have fought harder. And hearing this made Claire stop walking, the weight of the truth landing deeper than she expected, because she had built her healing around believing the past was settled, that love had ended cleanly, but now she saw that the ending had been quiet, unfinished, and Ethan quickly assured her that he was not trying to push her toward anything, that he only believed she deserved honesty, and Claire thanked him, her voice steady even as memories surfaced, late-night talks with Mark, laughter that once felt endless, arguments that came from fear rather than hate. And as they continued walking, the tension shifted into reflection, and Claire admitted that she had loved Mark deeply, but loving someone was not always enough to save a marriage, and Ethan accepted this without judgment, saying he understood more than people gave him credit for, that watching adults struggle had taught him patience instead of anger, and the conversation moved fast, covering years and minutes, touching on missed chances, emotional distance, and how time changes people without asking permission. And when they reached the end of the path, Ethan paused and said that reaching out to Claire had not been easy, but it had been necessary, because he needed to understand where he came from to know where he was going, and Claire felt pride and sadness at once, realizing the boy she once guided was now guiding himself, and as they parted, there was no drama, only a quiet exchange of gratitude, but when Claire returned to her apartment, the truth Ethan shared refused to stay silent, and she found herself replaying Mark's imagined voice, wondering if regret had lived on both sides without either of them knowing, and she questioned whether healing meant forgetting or simply learning how to live with what remained, and as night settled in, she understood that Ethan's words had shifted something deep inside her, not reopening wounds, but revealing they had never fully closed, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to ask not what went wrong, but what might still be possible, knowing that even asking the question could change everything. A week later, Claire's phone buzzed again, but this time it was not Ethan, it was Mark, her ex-husband, sending a message that was short, careful, almost hesitant, saying that he hoped it was okay that Ethan had reached out, and that he just wanted to admit he had missed her, and the words hit her unexpectedly, stirring memories she thought she had tucked away, memories of laughter, arguments, and quiet moments when love had felt simple and endless, and she felt a mixture of nervousness and curiosity as she agreed to meet him for dinner at a small, cozy restaurant downtown, the kind of place that smelled of fresh bread and warm lights, and when she arrived, Mark was there before her, looking older, quieter, his eyes carrying a depth that only years and regret can bring, and as they sat across from each other, there was a strange tension, a space filled with unspoken words, but rather than diving into the past or the divorce, they talked about life in small, careful steps, about work, about missed opportunities, about dreams that had shifted and grown in their absence from each other, and Claire noticed the subtle changes in him, the way he smiled with restraint, the way he listened more than he spoke, and she realized that the man sitting across from her was familiar but also new, shaped by time in ways that both hurt and comforted her, and as dinner progressed, the conversation deepened without forcing intimacy, flowing naturally into memories of shared holidays, funny stories from Ethan's childhood, and the way they had once built a home together, and Mark admitted softly that he had never stopped caring, that he had struggled to find the right way to reach out, that pride and fear had held him back longer than he wanted, and Claire felt the old ache of love return, not sharply, but as a gentle tug, reminding her of the bond they had once shared and the comfort it had brought, and when dinner ended, they walked outside under the city lights, the cool night air wrapping around them, and neither rushed, both savoring the rare quiet between them, and when it was time to part, there was no dramatic gesture, no promises or declarations, only a long, steady look from Mark, a look filled with honesty, hope, and an unspoken acknowledgement of everything they had lost and everything they might regain, and as Claire drove home, her thoughts were tangled, remembering Ethan's words about honesty and courage, realizing that the advice he sought had opened a door she had never expected to walk through, and she understood that reconnecting with Mark did not erase the past or undo the pain, but it offered a chance to feel again, to explore the possibility that life could be different now, quieter, deeper, and more honest, and when she finally reached her apartment, her phone buzzed one last time with a message from Ethan saying simply that he was glad he had reached out, and in that moment, Claire felt a strange mixture of closure and beginning, understanding that sometimes the heart's path is not linear, that love and connection can return in gentle, unexpected ways, and that what had started as a conversation about advice had transformed into a reckoning with feelings she had thought were long buried, leaving her both unsettled and quietly hopeful for the future. Months passed, each day moving quickly yet carrying its own weight as Claire and Mark cautiously rebuilt a connection that felt both familiar and new, learning to speak honestly without fear, to listen without judgment, and to enjoy moments without rushing them. And they discovered a rhythm that did not exist before, a quiet companionship filled with shared laughter, thoughtful conversations, and small gestures of care that reminded them why they had loved each other in the first place, while Ethan remained a steady, silent presence in their lives, offering support without interference, never overstepping, understanding that his role was not to influence their choices but to witness honesty and healing. And Claire realized that the advice Ethan had once asked for had triggered something much larger, a series of events that allowed her to see her own heart clearly, to recognize the lingering feelings she had carefully hidden, and to appreciate the changes in Mark, the growth that time had brought, the lessons learned through years apart. And as she spent evenings with him, sometimes walking along quiet streets, sometimes cooking together, sometimes simply sitting side by side in comfortable silence, she felt the slow rebuilding of trust and intimacy, noticing how patience and respect created a space where love could grow without fear, and she understood that reconnecting did not erase the past but allowed them to move forward with awareness and care. And every small moment, every shared smile, every glance that lingered longer than expected, reinforced that their connection had matured, deepened, and taken on a gentler, richer meaning. And Claire felt a sense of calm satisfaction in the realization that life sometimes gave second chances not as a dramatic event, but as a quiet, steady unfolding of understanding, compassion, and mutual respect. And one evening, as she sat on her porch watching the sunset, Mark joined her, their hands resting near each other without needing to touch, and she felt a warmth and contentment she had not known in years, recognizing that love could return not through grand gestures or urgency, but through honesty, patience, and the courage to face what had been left unfinished. And as the sky faded into night, Claire smiled, knowing that the story of her heart had not ended when she thought it had, that sometimes life waits for the right moment to continue, and that the quiet, steady path she and Mark were walking together might not be perfect, might not be fast, but it was real, it was theirs, and it was exactly what they had needed, leaving her with a sense of peace and hope that came from understanding that endings are rarely final, and beginnings can appear in the most unexpected, gentle ways.